Obviously, I'm going to bet number 4 is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a tough group to look at right now. This
Mhm.
roster's pretty barren. They've kind of cleaned house of everything that, was that Super Bowl team from a few years ago. And I mean, look, the thing is like we've gone through your position groups and we've gone through your ratings and the formula you have for wins added value. I mean, their two best position groups are probably the groups that add the least amount of wins to your team. And that's just a tough thing to look at. They still got some serious problems throughout the roster. And while I think there's some exciting rookies on this team to look forward to, I still think it's at least 2 years away from this team being competitive. So, yeah, Philadelphia Eagles coming in at number 4.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It all starts with, I think, the best case scenario for the Eagles this year is if you end the year saying we have a franchise quarterback. That's what you're hoping for. You're not hoping for a Super Bowl. You're not hoping for the playoffs. You're hoping for Jalen Hurts to take a step forward. He's a tier 4 right now. He showed some flashes, but I do feel like the main thing that he did better than Carson Wentz was he just made something happen out of nothing better than Carson Wentz, which ideally I want you to do something that, run an offense, but no one could run an offense given the situation. So it'll be a bit better of a situation. Hopefully that helps him. And you also have Nick Sirianni, who finished 26th in our rankings. Again, rookie head coaches are going to be worse. I think that there's some intrigue in Sirianni, but that cost them half a win right there for those two positions.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a tough situation overall. And like you said, with the way that offensive line was hurt and also struggling at times, I think that it would have been tough for any quarterback to come into that situation and be successful, especially a rookie. I still have a lot of concerns about his accuracy, and that's one of the things that I think everybody is skeptical about with Jalen Hurts. But the guy's going to be one of the best athletes on the field anytime he's out there, and he showed that too. He showed his terrific athletic ability, the ability to make play. But yeah, I mean, I do think there are some issues with the accuracy. We'll see how he develops here with a new offense and new look going for him.
Yeah, and there's some other issues with this offense that were issues last year. I mean, the running game there's guys who I'm interested in, Miles Sanders, who has shown flashes. You have Boston Scott, Kerryon Johnson. We'll see if he can stay healthy, and then Kenneth Gainwell, who was a 5th rounder, but people were high on, so he might be better than a typical 5th round running back. I do have this as a tier 5 running back room. It was close to a tier 4, but there's actually no difference between tier 5 and tier 4. So either way, running back's probably not going to be too huge, and we'll even do wide receiving room as well. This is another tier 5 spot. Devonta Smith, I'm interested in. I do like as a prospect, but how much is he going to completely change the dynamic? Hopefully he can just be a guy, but he's pretty much going to have to be a number 1 receiver immediately. I think Jalen Reagor is someone who I think I can see him being a positive asset. Do I think he's going to be, they would easily trade a 1st round pick for him now. So the pick hasn't worked out the way you would hope, but there's maybe some hope there. You also have Greg Ward, who in his past 2 years does have over 1,000 yards combined. So maybe there's some hope there. And then Travis Fulgham, who had a really hot start, did cool off, but still ended up leading the Eagles in receiving yards with just 539, kind of shows the dire straits they were at last year. You have Dallas Goedert, who's really good, but then Zach Ertz, who he just wasn't good last year. There's no getting around it. This is the tier 5 wide receiving / tight end core, along with a tier 5 running back. So that's some issues right off the bat for Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, Ertz was bad, and then the contract doesn't make it any better. It's a tough situation. They're looking to, I think they're still looking to trade him, and I'm just wondering if they're just not finding any suitors just because of how bad he was last season, and that's a tough thing to get rid of. So the first surprise here was I was a little surprised with the running back. I like Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders wasn't good enough for you to move this into tier 4, even tier 3 potentially, because I like him. I like Kerryon Johnson for the 4.5 games he's going to play this season, because that's just about what he's good for before he gets hurt. But yeah, I mean, I like Sanders a lot more than thinking like he's leading a bottom 5 running back room. I know it doesn't add any wins value once you get to that level, but I do feel like he's a valuable player.
Yeah, it's possible. This is one that jumped out at me as well. It's like, oh, really? I gave that tier 5 because I did make this a month ago. I can try and pull up the rankings real quick and see who I have them just below. But yeah, I mean, I don't hate Miles Sanders as a player. I really liked him, as a rookie, and I do think that there's some value here. But the teams who he's below are teams like, the Atlanta Falcons have Mike Davis. I would say Mike Davis had a better season than him. I mean, you could maybe argue that this should be better than like the Bills or the Texans. Like I said, if you want to give it tier 4, you can give it tier 4. I don't hate that. But either way, as it stands right now, I don't see a guy who's like a clear cut top 20 running back in the league, or even a top 25, maybe not even a top 32 running back in the league, which is why I ended up putting it at tier 5.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. We'll see what happens. I do think my one prediction for this season is Sanders isn't going to rank 21st in the league in carries. I think he's going to be closer to like top 15 potentially. I think he's going to get the ball this season. I think they're going to work him into the offense a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know that it does seem like he's one of those guys also who is more of just a true runner, but again, that's what his main job is. We'll talk about the offensive line as well. This is a tier 3 offensive line. I don't think it's horrible. I don't think it's great either. And the issue is they have some big names. Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, and Jason Kelce are all huge names if you're into offensive linemen. All these guys have either had injuries or are getting up there in age. So that's the issue. The other guy, you have Andre Dillard, a tackle who was a first rounder in 2019, but he's struggled to get playing time, whether that's being behind people or being injured. The other guard, Isaac Sumerolo, who seems to be solid. And then they did draft Landon Dickerson in the second round, who has injury histories. But, if Jason Kelce does take a step back, you have Dickerson who can come in. So there's some real potential here, but there's also ways this can go south, which is why it ends up tier 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest question with the Eagles, because I think last year we had them as a tier 1 offensive line. And the biggest question with this team, not is this offensive line good enough? The question is, what's this offensive line going to look like by week 6? Because that's it. That just seems like the biggest thing that happens with them all the time is these guys just aren't around by week 6. I mean, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, Brooks and Johnson are both coming off of injuries. Kelce is always solid, but he is also, not under 30 anymore. So that's another thing to add to it. So I think that there's good players in this team. But yeah, I mean, who's going to be around by week 6? Because it always seems like there's two, and it's not just one guy. It seems to be 2 or 3 guys that are going down with this team on the offensive line. So if they can stay healthy, I think this is a solid group. But I mean, betting wise, I'm betting that they're not going to be healthy by that time.
Yeah, I think that'd be a fair bet to take. I definitely wouldn't bet that they would stay healthy. So 30th offense in the league, only 2.14 wins throughout the offense. That's tough, and it gets a little better with the defense. Doesn't get a ton better. The coverage is really the issue with this defense. You have Darius Slay, who's maybe the bright spot, but that's not saying a ton. I didn't think he was a mess last year, but he wasn't Darius Slay of old either. And then the rest, you got guys like Avonte Maddox, who is Pro Football Focus's worst graded corner last year. Kevin Seymour, who I have in my notes is less than replacement level. So that says that, given that he's probably their third guy. They did draft someone in the 4th round, McPherson. But as a whole, the cornerback room is a mess. Now, they added Anthony Harris, who I think could be good, coming off of a down year in Minnesota, but has had a lot of good years. They also have Marcus Epps. So the safety isn't horrible. For linebackers, TJ Edwards, you have Alex Singleton and Eric Wilson, who's kind of a good coverage guy, maybe not the best in run defense. So, this is not a good coverage unit. I have this as the 3rd worst coverage unit in football, largely due to the cornerback issues.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I watch a lot of college football. I can't remember a single play that Zach McPherson made in his entire career at Texas Tech. I mean, I watch a fair amount of games too. So it's not like, I mean, that's an interesting pick, but we'll see how it works out. And yeah, I mean, if you can get the best versions of Slay and Harris, then all of a sudden this can turn around and be somewhat competitive. Even, the problem is that we've continued to see it with this Eagles coverage is there's just guys who are big problems on this secondary. It's not necessarily that they have like bad top end players, but football is a weak link sport. The weakest link of a defense is going to be attacked constantly. And, a guy like Avonte Maddox, I'm sorry, he's going to be constantly attacked. It doesn't matter how awesome Darius Slay and Anthony Harris are. They're going to go at Maddox. They're going to go at Kayvon Wallace. They're going to go at these guys and make it hurt.
Right. It doesn't matter if Darius Slay is having a career year if no one's throwing him the ball because everyone else is open on the other side of the field.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it's a tough situation. It's a weak link sport. You can't have weak links on defense, especially. It's just too hard to be a good defense with bad players. Just ask the Green Bay Packers. Look what
Hmm.
happened, and Kevin King's better than Avonte Maddox. So it's
Yeah,
just a tough situation.
yeah, and there's no doubt about it. Alexander is better than current Darius Slay. Where it gets better is the front seven. Further run, they have interior defensive linemen Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox. For the edge, Derek Barnett, Brandon Graham, who is one of the real underrated edge guys in this league. At one point, he was leading the league in sacks last year before falling off a little. They added Ryan Kerrigan as well, which is interesting. And then mentioned the linebackers as already. This ended up being, top five are tier one. The run defense ended up being number 6. So it's tier 2, but barely. Pass rush is tier 3, actually, but barely. It was 12th and top 11 make it. So they got a little unlucky there with getting a, tier below on each of those. But still, as a whole, I rate coverage a lot higher than I rate front seven. So they end up with a 27th defense in the NFL. And also kicker Jake Elliott, tier 4. So that puts them at a total of 3.32 wins, 30th in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, this team's always had a good defensive line. This is still an excellent defensive line. I mean, I love
Yeah.
Fletcher Cox. He's really
Mhm.
good. I mean, I think the problem is, when anyone just looking at your figures and your metrics, if anybody questions it, just look at the Philadelphia Eagles the past couple of years. They've had
Mhm.
elite level defensive line play all of these years, but it doesn't matter how good your edge rushers are if guys are getting open that quickly. People have been able to
Right.
torch this Eagles defense at times because they haven't had the coverage to contain these guys. And it doesn't matter how good your pass rush is if you don't have the guys at the back. And I think that's going to hurt them again this season.
Yeah, it's hard to argue the contrary. I mean, like we said with the Eagles, I don't think this to me. This feels like a clear rebuilding year. I wouldn't even hate the idea of maybe trading some of these veterans if you can get value back and see what happens there. But again, is this really just a season of we're spending an entire year to hope that Jalen Hurts is good? If you're an Eagles fan.
Basically, it's seeing what kind of assets you have. You're seeing what assets you have out of him, out of Jalen Rieger, out of Travis Fulgham. I guess the big thing is you got to see if you do whatever you can to get some sort of asset for Zach Ertz. And then, as you said, I mean, I'd be dangling Fletcher Cox at this point too. I know NFL is not quite the same as NBA in terms of these trades,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, what's the point of having Fletcher Cox in this team right now? I mean, he's a fantastic football player, but there's only so much impact he can make on a bad defense.
Yeah, I totally agree. Even if it's a deadline deal or something, I think it makes sense. Again, people just don't love to do it, but especially like a Fletcher Cox, it's like it's not like you have to learn a whole new system the way like a quarterback does. Like there's some little things you'll have to learn, but for the most part, you just run after guys.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's something I would look into doing. I think he net something on the market too, so that'd be a good asset return, I think. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's going to be a tough season for the Eagles. So you had 3.32 wins. Have you seen
Yeah,
their over under numbers?
I have not. What is it?
They're at 6 or 6.5, depending on where you look.
Okay. Yeah, I think I would lean to under.
Yeah, I mean, this just they have them ranked as, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 worst team in football. I mean, that feels about right, but maybe even worse, especially because the teams behind them are the Bengals and the Jaguars and the Jets. If those quarterbacks look more promising than Jalen Hurts, I wouldn't be surprised to see all those teams jump them.
Well, that's the way that they get to over 6 wins is if Hurts just lights it up and turns into that franchise quarterback. Which again, there's been moments with Hurts. Like I don't hate Hurts at all. And again, if you win 6 games this year and Jalen Hurts has like a near Pro Bowl caliber season, this is going to be about as happy as the Eagles fans have been, in 30 years minus the one season they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, do you see any scenario where this team wins the division?
No.
No. So, yeah, I
Mm-mm.
mean, this is the one. I think these other 3 teams are really competitive, and I think it's actually really close. I don't see a scenario where this team wins. So, yeah, if they can find any sort of, promise out of Hurts, that's the best case scenario for me.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess there's 1% or whatever, but I think it's so hard to see it with their tough wide receiving room. They would really need those young players to step up. A tough cornerback room, and they didn't do a ton to fix it. They did a little, but they didn't do a ton. And then, question mark at quarterback, rookie head coach. That's just, I think it would be foolish to pick them to win the division.